Would you like to grow some really cool dragon fruit like this on a trellis? Well, today we're going to show you how to build a trellis, one for a container and one for in the ground. And if you like this video, could you please like and subscribe down below? It's the way small channels like me keep growing. All right, let's get to it. If you haven't had that much experience with dragon fruit, they are an amazing cactus that produces a wide variety of colors of delicious fruit. The most common kind has a magenta outside with a white interior that you can find at grocery stores. To me though, they're kind of bland and a little bit tart sometimes. There are other dragon fruit that are magenta, deep purple, red, and a few other colors on the inside. And they tend to be delicious. They taste like watermelon and grape to me. There's also a kind with a yellow exterior and a white interior that tastes like, I would say, sugar water and honey. So I grow many dragon fruit. Some are in the ground, a few others are in containers, and throughout the years I've learned a lot of tips and tricks that I'm going to show you here in this one to make a trellis that's a little bit on the shorter side so it won't fall over. Let's look at what we need to build this trellis. You can also use it for grapes and other things that need some sort of support to grow up and then drape over. So first and foremost, you're gonna need a container. The wider the better, because you're gonna be building some height to the trellis and you're gonna have arms of the dragon fruit hanging over. You want it to have some balance. A wider base is gonna provide you with a more sturdy foundation. A skinnier pot isn't going to work because you're going to be top heavy and it's going to fall over. Now ultimately I would like to go with a terracotta pot, but in my shopping spree I couldn't find one, so I'm going to use a plastic container that I'm going to drill holes on the bottom. This should work just fine if you can't find terracotta. Terracotta just adds weight to it, which is good. Then you're going to need 4x4s, preferably made out of redwood. The reason I suggest redwood, it's the longest lasting wood that when it comes into contact with soil or water, it'll last 5 to 10 years. We're also going to treat it with something that once it's cured is completely plant and animal safe. There are a couple of ways to do it. There's a great glue out there called Woodtite 3 that if you brushed it on the bottom and you have to completely let it dry, it is absolutely non-toxic. That's actually what I use on the inside for my vivariums where I keep frogs, because they're amphibious and so they're going to be so sensitive to any chemical out there. So that's a really good glue to have. I'm actually going to experiment with that on some of these and experiment with other products. The thing with things you're going to use to seal the wood is you do not want it to seep into the soil. You're going to be eating the fruit produced out of this. You want everything to be non-toxic. With Flex Seal, that's going to be another one that I tried, and I went onto their Amazon question and answer site, and they said that once it's fully cured, and I mean fully cured, so this is going to probably be 24 or 48 hours, you will then have a product that is also animal and plant safe. So this is one that I'm going to use here, and then there are others, you know, that are on the market, as long as they provide some sort of waterproofing for the wood, and then they are absolutely non-toxic once they're cured. That's the most important thing. After you get the 4x4, I'm also gonna get a 2x4, also of redwood, because when we stand this up into the container, even if it's filled with soil, it's gonna be a little bit wobbly. So we're gonna build a brace, almost like a pinwheel, to help prevent this from falling down once it's inside the container. So that is what the 2x4 is for. Then lastly, you probably need a good pair of working gloves, a measuring tape and something to mark your measurements with, a drill or impact driver with a screwdriver bit, some outdoor grade screws, which they're usually called deck screws, but they do have to be outdoor graded so that they don't rust and then, you know, make your good trellis collapse. And then I'm gonna need a drill bit to put holes in this guy. And then lastly, what I'm gonna need is a saw so that I can cut these down to the size that I want. And then of course, you're gonna need potting mix and your dragon fruit. So first you need to decide how tall you want your dragon fruit trellis to be. Since it's in a pot, I'm not gonna go overly tall, because if I did, it has a better chance of falling over when it's windy or when the dragon fruit is just too weighty on it. In the ground, I go 8 to 10 feet. Here, we're gonna go probably about 73 inches is what I guess. Put it directly in the middle, about right here is good. A little taller than I am. It's not that tall because once we weight the bottom down, it shouldn't be too tall where it falls down. Still gives the dragon fruit a lot of room to drape down and do their thing. So I measured from right here down to the bottom, and it's 73 inches. So to make sure your 4x4 doesn't fall over, we're gonna be doing a pinwheel style base at the bottom. This measures 3.5 inches wide. 15 and a quarter is the diameter. So you could do it a couple of different ways. For me, what you could do is 15.25 minus the 3.5, right? You're minusing what the width of your 4x4 is. So 15.25 minus 3.5 and divide that by 2. So with that number, you're then going to add the 3.5 back, and that's gonna be exactly how long you need to cut 4 pieces of wood from your 2x4. And I did a couple of mathematical equations on this guy, and they all came out to be about the same thing. We are now going to put the drainage holes into the container with a drill and a good old size thick drill bit. All right, so we just drilled several big thick drainage holes into our container. I did a few on the bottom, and then if you noticed, I also did one on the side. Just from my experience, I've noticed that sometimes when you turn it over, you're going, everything gets planted and all that stuff. Well, sometimes it gets clogged. So by doing one on the side, that will be yet another drainage hole where if those do get blocked up somehow, you can then drain it that way. So use your judgment. Depending on what your conditions are, you may want more. So now we're going to go cut our pieces of wood. We live in a very small space, so very much excuse me for the messy brush. Whenever you're using any sort of saw of any type, use the best precautions you can. I'm going to be using glasses, a breathing mask so I don't get in all the dust, and then headphones to block out the noise. So now we've cut our wood down. What you're really going to be doing is on each of the 4 pieces that you've cut, you're going to be attaching it to the very bottom. So it'll go like this. Then the next one will go like this and like this and like this. That way they all line up at the bottom, but they're facing in a different direction. That's going to form the base. Hello, my lovely assistant. So I have my exterior deck screws, and I'm going to put 2 in each of these. So I have my exterior deck screws, and I'm going to put 2 in each. I'm going to be using 3-inch deck screws. There we go. You're going to be doing 2 per side is so that the piece of wood does not have a chance to shift. One quick side note is now before anything is actually joined together would be a good time to use Flex Seal or the wood glue, the wood tight or the tight 3. But I'm gonna just skip that for the sake of getting this done for this video. But otherwise you would spray everything down, let it completely cure, and then put it together. I'm gonna cheat on this one, sorry about it, but I'm going to spray after I put the trellis together. So now the big test. Will it stand up on its own? So we're gonna see what it looks like once it's in here. It's pretty sturdy. There is no way that that's gonna shift in there. To make sure this has good, proper drainage and is weighted at the bottom, I'm going to be putting very large gravel at the bottom just to add some more weight to the bottom. Now we have to go and do the top. So the top is going to be a square. I like 2 feet. I'm gonna cut 4 pieces of 2 feet length wood and then 1 in the middle, because you're going to build a frame with 1 going down the center, and that centerpiece is going to be what fits on top. So let's go do that. To show you what I'm mimicking, last year I built these for a grape trellis. I just did 2-foot frames around them. Not with redwood, and not with true 2x4s. So we're gonna be doing just a variation on this. So let's measure out our very first 24 inches. All right, so the cool thing is if you do by chance have a miter saw or a table saw, you can do something that's called a stop block. And that's going to allow you to let every single piece be the same length without ever having to measure, except for the first one. So I made a stop block, and you're gonna be able to go and research online ways to make stop block for your particular saw. They are all basically the same idea. So what I did was I took a piece of wood, it's attached to the back of the saw, and then I made this piece, which is the actual block. So when you put it onto the track and you've measured your first piece and it's in position, then I'm moving my block literally to butt up or stop against the piece that I'm cutting, and I'm going to lock it into place. And what that means is now every single piece of wood, the same cut every single time. So a very simple method would be to lay out two just like this, and then you just need to line up these so that they all nicely and neatly line up. This is the way I'm going to choose to do it. This will give you a pretty sturdy top support that you're gonna need, that the dragon fruit can then grow through the holes in the middle and fall out. Let's quickly put this together because we're not far away from being done. 2 screws for each piece of wood so that they don't rotate, but since you're gonna be having one on each side, it's less critical. So that weight is distributed as evenly across your entire structure as possible, I did go and grab my tape measure because I'm going to want to measure to make sure that this middle board is as close to the center as possible. So what that would mean in 24 inches, you want the middle of the middle board to be pretty close to 12, right? There is the middle of the board. So now you have a very, very sturdy structure. If you can find lighter wood, because you're going to be protecting it with Flex Seal or whatever else you choose to protect it with, especially anything above the container that's not touching the soil, you have a little bit more options you can play with. But this redwood is pretty heavy. So I made 2 different 2-foot tops here. This one is out of redwood, and this one is out of a basic 2x4. I'm actually going to go with the basic 2x4, and the reasoning is because this is half the weight. So we're actually in a pretty good spot for today. I was able to get this very level in the container, and this is very level up on top. So the last thing we're gonna do for today is go ahead and seal the bottom and seal as much of the top as we can, and then we're gonna let it sit overnight, and tomorrow we'll pick up and then we're gonna plant it. Could also stain these or use a sealer that has a stain in it to get like a brown look or some other look. I like the way this wood naturally weathers, so I'm gonna leave it the natural look, but feel free to go be creative and use whatever you want. Okay, so we are so close to being done with the container one. Once we're done with the container one, I have one free space left in the yard, and we'll go ahead and do a trellis there as well. We're gonna build it exactly like we did this one, except minus the bottom. Let's go ahead and get started with this one. It's gonna be pretty easy. We're gonna put the trellis in. We're going to put some pond pebbles at the bottom to help weight it down. And then we are going to put soil in, plant the dragon fruit. This was level. We put the rocks at the bottom, and now we're gonna backfill everything with soil. Because you're growing in a container and the plant needs to get all the nutrients from what is in the container and what you add to it, I suggest getting the highest quality potting mix you can. That's one thing you don't want to skimp on, or make your own. That's what I did. So for mine, I used 1 part each of peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, rice hulls, sand, and compost. That gave me an incredibly rich and diverse soil that is going to be really good for planting basically anything in. So what I'm about to do, probably I would not suggest for you guys to do. I'm very limited for space, especially for something kind of bigger like this. So what I'm going to do is plant 4 different types of dragon fruit, 1 on each side, that will go up, and then they're gonna intermingle. I highly suggest keeping each one individual if you're gonna be doing this, because it's easier to keep track of them, easier to manage, and all that kind of good stuff. But for me, I'm gonna go ahead and risk it and do this. I'm gonna do one called Valdivia Roja, which is not self-fertile. We're gonna do another one from Edgar, a white that is self-fertile. Then we're gonna be doing G2 and Ecuadorian yellow. So you're gonna have everything there. You're gonna have a red, you're gonna have a light magenta, you're gonna have a white with magenta skin, and then a white with yellow skin. So there's gonna be a lot of diversity in here, and we'll be able to cross-pollinate all of them in this one pot. Pot will get heavy. I think I'm gonna keep it on the deck here because it needs a very flat surface. Now we're gonna take all of our stuff and we're gonna start planting them. With this third one, it's relatively large, so we're gonna go ahead and start supporting it to the frame. You'll have to do this as the dragon fruit grows up, but you can use, they have Velcro tape at the gardening center. This is stretch tape that a lot of arborists use to attach trees to stakes. It's really stretchy, you can do a lot with it, and for this it's gonna be perfect because it's gonna give some give as the plant tries to grow up. Eventually, the dragon fruit really start attaching itself to the post. So this will be a moot point because you can remove it later on. Once I'm done here, I'll turn the pot around. That way we can kind of see everything that's going on. I am not stingy on the tape, by the way. I mentioned gloves at the beginning. Also wear gloves. Do not follow my advice on this. Now, for the time being, this will not be the most attractive with all this tape on here. Just give it a few months. Once everything starts to grow and you're gonna be able to clean up everything, it's gonna be well worth it. All right, make sure my tags are in. So I'm gonna turn the pot around and you have your 4 dragon fruit planted in the pot. So I'm gonna make room over here. I'm gonna put it on the deck and then we're gonna go in the back and we're gonna put the one in the ground and we're gonna plant it up. So here's our spot in the yard and I'm gonna put the dragon fruit here because it gets a lot of sun and it's gonna be a very different climate than the one that we did in the container on the deck. It's gonna be a little bit more brutal back here. I do wanna make sure that I have circumference so that I can get back here and be on each side so it's not difficult to pollinate or get to the actual plant. So we're gonna dig a hole about 2 feet down, and I actually changed my mind a lot. So we are not only going to be doing the flex seal at the bottom of the 4x4, which is drying now, we are gonna use this awesome stuff called Sika Post Fit. The reason I do it is twofold. One, it's gonna adhere to the wood where the flex seal is. It's gonna be double protection against rot. Second, it's gonna fill up a lot of that space that you just dug to put the post. And like concrete, it's going to do a pretty good job of keeping that post in place. It's just an extra element that you can do that helps the stability. I've never had any fall down. So we're gonna dig the hole. Thank God, this is probably one of the easiest holes I have ever dug. For the years that we've lived here, I've dumped all of our extra compost material, paper bags, yard clippings all over the yard. And it's made such a big difference that when I'm digging in this, it is just loose, porous, heavy, but just very, very pliable. So if you have a problem with your soil, just start all those kitchen scraps. Start collecting them. Eggshells, banana peels. We do everything. We cheat, we even do dairy. But what we do with dairy is we dig a hole, put whatever we're throwing away in there, whether it's old cheese or something like that, and then we cover it up. That's a godsend. The worms do not mind it. They take care of all of that for you and you're good to go. Alrighty, so that hole seems pretty deep. I'm guessing it's about 2 feet deep. And then I'm gonna see if I have any extra gravel or pebbles that we can put on the bottom so that when the fence post sits at the bottom, it's not directly hitting the dirt. It has a little bit of drainage at the very bottom. Coarse gravel is pretty good. That way, as you water your plant, it doesn't go and stay in contact with the wood. So that drainage is very important. Even with the precautions we're taking, we're gonna do the pebbles as well. I went and got some of the pebbles that I was telling you about. We're gonna put those at the bottom, then we're going to put the post up, and then we're gonna do the Sika fence post mix. So we're gonna put those down there. That's good. Make sure it's kind of flat so I don't have to get someone else to help me. We're gonna see if I can level it out myself before I put the Sika fence post mix in. All right, all I'm doing is trying to get it to stand up straight, just long enough for me to do the foam concrete. And if I can't do it, I'm gonna get help, but let's pretend this is gonna work. Wow, all right. That's pretty damn level. I am gonna go ahead and do the fence post mix. This can be quite a mess. I don't have gloves. Use gloves. You are going to get messy with this. But I've used this 1,000 times before. I'm gonna be pretty careful. Just follow the instructions on the bag. It sets very quickly. I would say within 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on your condition. And then we'll backfill with the dirt once we're done. All right, so it's in place. I may actually move the camera just to watch it, see if we can see anything expand. I made a little bit of a mess. If I was you, I would do it a little bit neater. So I already got some on the board, but as you can tell, it is turning white and it is going to start to expand. I already see it forming white goodness in there. So it is expanding. We're gonna have it sit and then we will backfill. And then it's time to put on the trellis top and plant the dragon fruit. Alrighty, so it is the next day. There is what all the expanding concrete left behind, and that is going to be very, very stable. So we're gonna shovel the dirt. That's boring to watch, so I'm gonna do it, and then we'll plant the dragon fruit. Alrighty, we are finally to the good part. We are going to plant our dragon fruit. I have 4 varieties. I'm gonna grow 1 on each side. Again, a little bit too much, but if you're limited in space, then you can control the size of the dragon fruit cuttings easily once they start taking off. So I'm just gonna keep them manageable. I have golden yellow, Israeli yellow, I have Connie Meyer, and Lisa. Those are the 4 we're gonna be planting. So as you can see, some of these are pretty long still. So what I'm gonna do is make sure I use the tape and make sure something doesn't break as close as I can while I'm putting them in the ground, and we're gonna take it from there. Well, unfortunately, my camera may have fallen while I was filming this, and I didn't even notice. We planted all the dragon fruit. We added a little bit of compost and rice hulls just to give it a good start. And now we'll go through and I'll show you what a good trellis is going to turn out to look like. This is the one that we did together on the deck. And I wanted to show you that once you get everything established and done, this is what a really good dragon fruit trellis is going to look like. I made this one, I think 2 years ago, and the dragon fruit are growing like mad. I think we got 30 fruit off of this one. I'd say this one's about 10 feet high, but I have several varieties in there. It's just kind of a mess. And it goes up to the jungle. And let's go check out the other one. Like I said, because of my limited space, I have to do dragon fruit in the containers wherever I can. So I did 2 on the side of our greenhouse, and they actually had a tragic accident and they lost a lot of the blooms and the fruit, but they still are producing. Here's the other angle. I have yellow and several versions of magenta and pink in here, but you know, doing pretty well. So that's it for the dragon fruit trellis build that we're gonna do this weekend. If you don't mind, just hit like and subscribe down there. It really helps a small channel like me grow. I really hope that you enjoyed, watching us and us being me and the dragon fruit. And I'll be bringing you lots of more videos and how-tos of rare and tropical fruit, unboxing, ornamentals, all these cool plant, and I can't wait to see you next time. Thanks.